Wow, I just finished reading this book from the legend himself, J. Paul Getty, How to Be Rich, His Formulas. And if you're not familiar with J. Paul Getty, I mean, if you're watching this video, you probably are familiar with him. But J. Paul Getty, they made a movie about him. I think it's like called All the Money in the World, about, I think it was his nephew that got kidnapped. And they made a big movie about it. And one thing about the movie is a lot of controversy about it. They started talking about J. Paul Getty in a way that was, not very nice. It made him seem like a person who only cared about money and was willing to like put his family member through like some very traumatic events over money. And on one hand, there's a side of it that, of course, he had a negotiator trying to work for him. He was trying to I think ultimately at the core of the story is this guy who's trying to like negotiate, who's trying to not just give in to these people who were trying to, ransom his family member. And then on the other hand, of course, people want to say, oh, if they had all the money in the world, they would have just given it all to rescue his son or nephew. But let's take that off the table for a second. That scenario, that situation. Let's take that off the table, and think about, what was J. Paul Getty like if it wasn't for that situation? If that had never happened, which we can't change history, of course, we can't turn back time or whatever, but say that situation never happened. Say that his family member never got kidnapped, and there was never controversy about that. Would people still see him as that like ruthless businessman who only cares about money? Who knows? But if we take a look at it from that perspective, what can we understand from this book? What can we take away from this book? How to be rich? What are J. Paul Getty's formulas? So after reading this book, one of my burning questions is, did J. Paul Getty actually write this book, or did he hire a ghostwriter? I mean, we all know most of the most successful people, the wealthiest, end up getting a ghostwriter anyway. But who knows? Maybe J. Paul Getty did write this book, and if he didn't, this book is very well written from a perspective of insight into the world of J. Paul Getty. I mean, as far as I can say, who am I to judge how he really was or wasn't? But I want to read this book because I visited the Getty Museum. I visited the Getty Villa. He's got this amazing villa that's got all this great Greek and ancient art in it, and it's absolutely an amazing visit. Right by the beach, you can overlook the ocean, the Pacific Ocean there. So, and it even has this like little mini Greek theater in there. But anyways, it made me wonder, who is J. Paul Getty, right? Like, who is this who at one time was one of the most wealthiest, richest men in the world financially? And of course, don't you want to know, what are his formulas? Anyways, this is a great read. If you see my other book recommendation videos, I don't give negative reviews. Basically, I try to look at just about every book from a positive standpoint. And, I end up mostly only reading well-recommended books anyways. So ultimately, you're not going to find anything too negative. So basically what I can look at from this book, some big takeaways is, first of all, this book is broken down into a few major sections. First, it's a big section about his perspectives on management. His perspectives on finding the right leaders, finding the right managers. And it's interesting to hear that because there's a lot of books about leadership and about management that are written by managers and executives. But it's also interesting to take a perspective on thinking about managers and how to find good managers from a perspective of wanting to be rich. Because if you want to be rich and you want to be a highly paid business executive or a highly paid entrepreneur, you gotta know how to find good managers, good employees. So that's such a big part of it. So on one hand, it's almost a handbook, the first part of it is almost a handbook about how to find good managers, how to find good leaders, how to judge the qualities of a high integrity person. that you want working for you or managing your business, and how to even motivate them and inspire them. So there's that side of it too, like a business skills and business knowledge book. But on the other side of it, this book has so much great information. Now, it might be a little outdated as it talks about stock markets and certain stocks, but some of the principles still remain true. I mean, compared to other books that I've read, and other wisdom that I've looked at, and things that I've tried and tested. So when it comes to some of the ideas like how to actually make money, other opportunities to make money, and why you don't need that much money to get involved, and also from a rich man's perspective, one rich man. I mean, there's a ton of rich people that J. Paul Getty addresses and talks about in this book who might have different perspectives from him. But at the same time, to get J. Paul Getty's perspective on things like art, stock market, real estate, I mean, he gives his perspective and his advice on how he would get rich in those businesses. I mean, you always see on YouTube and influencers, like, what would you do if you had to start all over again? And if, may J. Paul Getty rest in peace, but if he had an opportunity to ask him, he might basically just share some of the chapters and ideas that are already in this book, like getting into a certain business, certain types of work ethics, certain types of beliefs and systems, and what businesses he would get into or how he would get into them, how he would research the businesses, things like that, as well as some of his interests, his beliefs, his perspectives on financial economics, that type of stuff, political, and not like super controversial ideas, but basically, how those perspectives mold into becoming an independent and wealthy individual. And of course, this book has an incredible ending. The entire ending talks about, a few different perspectives about money and time, and, having time, and shares some of his regrets. But, don't skip to the end. I totally recommend reading the entire thing and then getting to the end and seeing what he has to say. It's a very powerful ending if you read the whole book. But the whole book has a ton of great ideas. I would say that the majority of the book is filled with mostly ideas about how to make money, like literally just formulas, like steps 1 through 10, ideas 1 through 10 on how to make more money, how to be rich, what perspectives you need to be rich, what ways to approach business to get rich. And earlier I said I'd like to know whether the author of this was J. Paul Getty or the ghostwriter. I mean, we all know usually ghostwriters, ghostwriters of big autobiographies, big biographies of very successful people, end up doing a lot of research. But how much of this was written by a ghostwriter and how much of this was written by J. Paul Getty, or how much of it is exactly J. Paul Getty's words? I mean, at this point, we might not never know. Maybe someone out there does. But overall, really great read. It felt like having an opportunity to sit right in front of J. Paul Getty and just ask him questions like what he thinks about management, what he thinks about business, what he would do if he had to start all over again, how he feels about real estate, how he feels about stocks, how he feels about other investment opportunities, how he feels about money and time and character and business and the current, economy and all those types of things. I mean, of course, it wouldn't be current economy because, he lived back in a day, back in, the early 1900s to the mid 1900s, but he's done some great things, and this is a great book that gives you some great lessons. And of course, with any of these books, there's no magic, reading a book is not going to suddenly, give magical powers upon, give magic to the person who read it. It's going to basically provide you with the knowledge, the information, the ideas, maybe some of the thought process, the mindset that you need to do the things that you want to do. And, it's up to you what you do from there. I mean, with that's the same with any book. There's no, magical formulas, but at least you can have some perspective into one man's formula. J. Paul Getty, at one time one of the richest men in the world, very successful, has built huge empires in oil. You know him for, I think he built ships as well, and he's huge in real estate and built some amazing real estate, made some amazing real estate deals. So great book, great information in this book, and it keeps you engaged. If you like this type of story, if you like this type of book, if you like this type of, I don't even want to call it a biography because it's not a biography as in like his life story as much as it is a book about his views on life, like literally like his perspectives and views about business and life and all that. And it does have some formulas. It's not like a 1 + 1 = 2 formula, but giving his steps, his methods, the procedures that he would do, the perspectives that he would take, the approaches that he would look at, the ideas that he would implement. And that's some great stuff to take away from this book. So that's my thoughts and takeaways on this book from the legend J. Paul Getty, How to Be Rich, his formulas. Thank you so much for watching. Check it out and have a wonderful day.